And the starting point for all conversation, I have to say, must be to listen, to engage and to treat one another with dignity and value. Of course, there is a line, especially if that discourse runs into hate speech or things are actually dangerous because of misinformation that also hinder public health policy or the public good, as it were. It certainly makes life a lot more difficult when you are fighting constant misinformation. There is a reason that we have an agreed set of common law and decisions made by experts, because left on our own, society just would not function. Those rules can protect and they can also harm. However, when the area is new or the trust has been eroded, that's when life gets incredibly difficult. A friend actually said to me, if people have genuine scientifically based concern, they may argue that the common good is upheld by a precautionary principle with regards to medical procedure. In fact, to continue without caution would for them actually be going against the common good. So it can be complex and at times maybe a non-binary situation. But that is perhaps really different from those who would make it all about some kind of global conspiracy. There is a wider point. We're experiencing a post-Enlightenment phase where people's faith in rationalism has been shaken. Science does not, after all, seem to have all the answers all the time. And experts may at times actually get things wrong as they try to figure out new strategies. So one day you may be briefing on one thing and the next day it might change slightly as more evidence comes to light. That can put doubt sometimes in people's minds. In this, of course, there are always those who will seek to profit from the spiritual vacuum this creates, including forms of sort of counter argument as well, by so-called experts, or maybe those YouTube videos we watch, or Facebook experts, who undermine generally held consensus views because it increases their profit profile and also their profit margin. Or it's done for political gain or instability in society, as we've heard about. No stability means confidence in the system is replaced by fear, leading to social instability. And community is replaced by individualism. Social welfare and concern is replaced by maybe even market economics, and that's another discussion. But it can also undermine a global effort where people are trying to do the right thing. And as we've alluded to, the global south, making sure that vaccine patents are shared and vaccines reach the global south instead of stockpiling vaccine in wealthy nations. This can happen not just by individualism on a governmental or corporate level, but also by suspicion of vaccination programs in general, by populations in need of treatment, and that can be also cultural as well. And it's about combating that. How do we do this? Because it's a global pandemic, which means a global response. But also about legitimate question. Well, I learned a lesson on listening a while ago. I got thoroughly chastised. I was talking to a friend about vaccines and there was a little culture and personality clash. One where they wanted info on vaccines and wanted to talk through side effects or say what others were saying. I was hearing, however, I don't want the vaccine, and I went into full, I shall prove to you why vaccines are fine and why through history we've used them, even though neither of us are medically trained nor scientists. And our friendly conversation suddenly became an argument and then extremely heated. I wasn't hearing my friends, I'm afraid, I just need a voice to listen. I was acting out of fear as well, and I had to apologize to them because in my mind, my friend had bought into conspiracy, or I was terrified that they would actually not be safe and would also get really sick. I resorted to rationalism rather than humanity. My friend did get the vaccine, but in that moment, what she needed to hear from me was a listening ear. One, I'm saying, I recognize you're scared, but how can I help and how can we do this together? As has been said, there is a legitimate question, and I personally would hope that everyone who is able can get a vaccine to protect themselves and others, and to take the strain off our brilliant health services. The Whittington Hospital, where I had my surgery last week on an ankle operation, actually spent most of its entire budget was being spent on COVID. That's how serious this situation is. Choice comes with and carries responsibility that also affects one another. And there have been several disturbing cases here in the UK of groups sending literature to people comparing lockdowns or vaccines to the Holocaust, which is highly inappropriate. Also cases of picketing hospitals, graffiti showing swastikas on hospital walls. harassment of doctors and nurses trying to save people's lives, or the deliberate harassment of parents and teachers at schools. This isn't choice or legitimate question in my view. That's self-promotion and extremely dangerous action that puts people's lives at risk. People should be treated with dignity, and that extends to not screaming at a doctor or parent's face. And those that do those things make life harder for the people who have genuine questions to be able to ask them, because they get pushed into another world where they can't express those questions or those fears. This has been a situation that is new in some cases. The approval for drugs and discovery made at a fantastic speed, and that should be something to be celebrated in my view. However, I understand people may have questions and concerns. What's in it? What does it do? What if I'm allergic? What about if I'm pregnant, etc.? I want to use an analogy here. So last week, as I alluded to, I had an ankle surgery. I was asked to consent and given a huge list of all the things that could potentially go wrong. I was then told the percentage for success and the percentage for the thing coming back in the first place. I was able to sit down with my surgeon and ask him questions. And I also wanted to ask about the general anaesthetic. Now, I just actually signed the form because I wanted it over and done with, just do the thing, get it done. I also trusted the consultant, but I was still putting, in effect, my life in his hands because I had no idea how my body would react. It's something they do all the time. It's something we do all the time. And I'm pleased to report, as you can see, I am still here. Now, my aftercare also had more forms, and also this drug you need to take, and this drug you need to take, and this has 100 side effects for this painkiller. But I just said, you know what, give me the drugs, it's going to help me. I'm also double jabbed. And again, when I went for my vaccine, I asked a question. I was given a list of side effects, but I did still take it, as I have done all my travel vaccines and all my childhood ones. Someone who didn't want a vaccine said to my gran recently, well, I don't have polio. And my gran said to them, yeah, because you were vaccinated when you were little. I expect, as with all medical advances, there have always been questions, concern, and sadly, conspiracy. One of the moments recently in the UK that has been a clear line crossing debates relates to a really disturbing and horrific crime. A police officer was found to have arrested a woman on false pretense of COVID restrictions. He then kidnapped and murdered her. In court today, this evil man was sentenced to a life term in prison. At the trial, a group of anti-lockdown protesters staged a very inappropriate rally outside the courthouse to make a political statement. Now, it was horrifically apparent COVID had been used to make this false arrest. However, this type of abuse of power has occurred in many terrible situations well before COVID regulations were brought in the UK, especially to people of colour. Any person in a position of power has the choice to abuse or not abuse their position, and that was evil. The COVID regs didn't kill her, an evil, sadistic person did. And this has sadly been the case on far too many occasions. And we see examples of abuse of power in many countries around the world in many types of professions. To use that situation was wrong and absolutely not in the public good. The case highlighted the need for accountability and then transparency for corruption to be rooted out. Just want to come into a close, but what I did want to highlight was a recent BBC article on conspiracy. And it said that conspiracy needs the right villain. Each society has its own anxieties and obsessions, and successful conspiracy traps into this and also acknowledges the knowledge gap people have. People may turn to the internet to fill their minds with things they don't understand or cannot control. It can lead to a kind of rabbit hole. There's also a book that says a lot of people are saying, and I love that phrase, a lot of people are saying, because we hear it all the time. A lot of people said this and that and this. It says there's been an increase in conspiracy without theory, but I'd go further and say there's been an increase of conspiracy of convenience. It can also be helpful to run to conspiracy because then I can avoid doing something I might have to admit I'm maybe a bit scared of, or maybe I can get out of doing something altogether. It's convenient. And I want to end with this quote. It's by a poet called Lawrence Overmere, and he simply said, doing the right thing, surrendering our short-term self-interest to serve the needs of the whole has never been easy for humankind. But now more than ever, that is exactly what we must do. Future generations are counting on us.